I meant the fact that police are backing off from proactive policing, the type of discretionary policing that FBI Director Comey rightly identified as the key to the historic crime drop that this nation has enjoyed over the last 20 years. These are the type of discretionary stops going up, as Director Comey said, at 1 a.m. on a drug corner. Somebody seems to be hitching up a gun and getting out of your car and asking a few questions. Police are not backing off of mandatory responses to 9/11 calls. They're continuing to do their duty, but the type of proactive policing that has been the target of a lot of police protest over the last year, officers are backing away from that. So this is documented, the drop-off in discretionary activity that works in opposite directions from public safety. When officers back off, contrary to the claim of the Black Lives Matter movement, the result is not a halcyon period for those many law-abiding residents of inner cities who want the police and need them. The result is the type of bloodbath that Director Comey rightly said is happening in cities across the country. It's putting everybody's lives at risk. And the ethos that says today that cops are racist for acting on their good faith observation of suspicious behavior is going to result in more use of force. The Justice Department has absolutely, explicitly determined that the most salient factor in predicting whether an officer uses force is how the civilian responds. And with more and more people resisting arrest now, unfortunately, we're in sort of a vicious spiral where officers are going to be provoked to use force more often themselves, thereby fueling what I think is a not fair discourse about policing. But the discourse that we have today paints with such a broad brush and has taken aim at basically almost the entirety of policing and says that somehow the police in every jurisdiction have developed racist attitudes, whether they're black or white. That's simply not the case. What the Black Lives Matter movement discourse has assiduously tried to keep off stage is crime rates. And crime rates remain so disproportionate between inner city neighborhoods and the rest of the country that is what drives police deployment. And police are going to inevitably, if they want to save lives, are going to be more heavily deployed in minority neighborhoods where they're going to have more encounters. The solution to the problem of what is alleged, I think incorrectly, of over-policing in minority neighborhoods is to bring crime down.
Our guest is Heather Mac Donald talking about the so-called Ferguson effect on police officers. We go next to Lewisburg, North Carolina, and hear from James. Go ahead.
Good morning to the guest and to C-SPAN host as well. Ms. McDonald is about to make my head explode. I'm just going to give you a short story. I was a police officer back in the early 80s for approximately 4 years. And I think the first night that I went out on patrol with my field training officer, he asked me, what do we call a nightstick? And me being new, I didn't know what folks, the experienced officers called a nightstick. So I asked him, I said, well, what do you call a nightstick? And I'm going to tell you, he told me, we call a nightstick a nigger knocker. That's what he told me. That's when I knew I wasn't going to stay in law enforcement. That's when I knew that bad cops and racist cops aren't like spotting a rainbow unicorn. It's a lot more prevalent than Ms. McDonald wants to acknowledge. We need to quit calling it anything other than racism. Racism is precisely what it is. Director Comey should be removed because his positions are directly in contradiction to his boss. And he's also fueling more division between the police and the African-American community. you have 200 years of racial tension between police and the black community.
James, we'll get a response. Thanks for your call.
Well, what James was told by his field training officer is appalling. And I would hope that that attitude has changed, and I believe that it has. I can tell you that is not even close to how police are trained today. And the officers that I've spoken to in the academy and those on the streets say, we're there because we want to help. We believe fervently in the good people of the community, and we're there to try and protect them from a much higher rate of crime than people in other communities live with.